The buzz is heating up over a potential trade between the Arizona Cardinals and the Tennessee Titans for the number 3 pick. So we're exploring that possibility from every angle today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins, and we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the NFL on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, Joe, you mentioned it in the open. We've started to hear some buzz in regards to another top draft trade. This potentially featuring the Arizona Cardinals, which when we did the Bijan Robinson exercise yesterday, we kind of effused how important it is for Arizona. If you have an opportunity to move out, y'all should really move out. And it sounds like there's one team in particular, at least according to NFL Network's Daniel Jeremiah, who he has really heard some rumblings on being interested to go up and make the splash.
Yeah, on the Move the Sticks podcast this week, Daniel Jeremiah said, quote, "Can I give you the team that I've been told to keep an eye on that's exploring this and looking into this," referring to the trade up? Again, this is just people around the league who said, do not sleep on numero 11, the Tennessee Titans. The two teams to keep an eye on with trade-ups were the Raiders and the Titans.
Okay. So these would both be quarterback trades in your expectation, huh?
Oh, boy. Yeah, you better. If you're trading up to 3 from 11, there's one position and one position only, and that's quarterback.
With the Raiders, you think the Raiders would go up for anything else?
I mean, I'd hope not. You're picking at 7. You're going to get a really good player. And potentially, like they have their edge rushers, you'd think. If there's anything they do have, it's edge rushers.
You think Chandler Jones is a long-term answer, though?
Yeah, I think he's going to be better next year.
He'll be better than last year, too. But
yeah, but, dude, I think they could sit there at 7. They might get their choice of offensive linemen. There could be some defensive tackle value there, depending on how things fall. I don't think that the Raiders, with all the needs they have, should be in this conversation. But obviously who should be in this conversation is the Arizona Cardinals, who own the number 3 pick. We've got 4 quarterbacks that could potentially go high in this draft. And Arizona is in prime position to move back and get themselves a bunch of assets in general manager Monty Ossenfort's first draft with the team. And, of course, what was his job before he came to the Arizona Cardinals? He was the director of player personnel in Tennessee for 3 seasons, 2020 through 2022. And he comes to Arizona, and obviously there's a big job ahead of him. New head coach, they've already hired Jonathan Gannon, but this roster is one of the worst in the league, and they need everything that they can get to retool. And Arizona right now is in good shape. They own picks 3, 34, 66, 96, 105, 168, 180, and 213. But I think continuing to stockpile those assets makes a ton of sense, especially in a year where who knows when Kyler Murray is going to be available and ready to play. And obviously a ton of needs throughout that roster.
So let me start with this. When you evaluate Arizona and the roster that they have, can we do the thing real quick?
Sure.
Your 3 premier positions on the offensive side of the ball are what?
Offensive tackle, quarterback, and wide receiver.
Okay, so at quarterback, you have Kyler Murray, who you gave a $240 approximately $1 million contract to. Unfortunately, he'll probably miss, we expect, the first half of the season at a minimum in recovering from the season injury. Behind that is Colt McCoy and David Blau, as things currently stand. Okay, but you at least feel like, okay, you made a very significant financial investment in a quarterback that has plenty of physical talent. You consider yourself that box checked, right? Think that's fair?
For better or worse, the box is checked.
Offensive tackle, DJ Humphries and Calvin Beachum. are your two players. I don't think either one of them is necessarily a bad. I classify them both as probably adequate starting tackles
Correct.
in the NFL.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
And then wide receiver is the presumed outgoing DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, who the team acquired via trade with Baltimore, Rondale Moore. I guess that Pascal's probably the next in line here.
Oh, Greg Dortch.
Greg
Dortch. He had a pulse last year, my guy. I'm excited for him.
Andre Basellia, Auden Tate, and Javon Wims.
Auden Tate, Javon Wims. Ooh.
So, what's the highest you would classify Marquise Brown at this stage in his career? Is he a quality starter? Quality Z? Or is he an adequate receiver? I don't think we'd classify him as a roster cornerstone by any capacity.
No, I wouldn't call him a roster cornerstone. There's a lot to like about what he brings to the table, and certainly there's a lot to respect with his skill set. But I don't think you look at Marquise Brown and say, this is my volume receiver that we're going to funnel the passing game through, right? I think you need to make sure that you complement him appropriately to maximize what he offers to your football team. But we've also seen two different teams invest first-round picks in the guy in the last, 4 or 5 years. So there's something to be said there.
Technically, last three seasons.
Yeah.
Baltimore drafted him in 19. He was
traded
on the
for
Brandon
one in
Cooks 2022. Yeah, right. So I think you could make a case for him to be a quality starter. So, you're not super dire offensively, but when you consider what the offensive or what the identity was of the Cardinals with Kyler and Cliff, for their better options to be on the offensive side of the ball, it's not a super big surprise, right? I mean, defensively, your premier positions are your outside pass rushers and your corners. Would you put anything else in that? Would you put an interior penetrator on that list?
I don't know.
Not that they have it.
In a vacuum, there's premium positions, but I think that the premium is always the good players. So
okay, so your primary pass rushers are Myjai Sanders and Cam Thomas, who were third-round picks last year, Victor Dimukeje, Dennis Gardeck, and Jesse Luketa. And then your corners are Antonio Hamilton, Christian Matthew, Rashad Fenton, Marco Wilson, Nate Hairston, Isaiah Simmons in the nickel.
Sounds like a great opportunity to move back and still find value potentially at corner, edge. It's going to be there for him.
Right. And the interior trio's not particularly good either.
No, it's
Ledbetter, Fotu, Rashard Lawrence, Collier is a lottery ticket at this point, Carlos Watkett, pretty much the whole. If you're not a safety, you probably don't feel too good about what you have in Arizona right now on the defensive side of the ball.
It's a foundational year for the Cardinals, and I can't think of a better opportunity to just have a bunch of young talent, to get them a bunch of time on task and opportunity in the system to be part of the foundation moving forward. It's a great opportunity to really get yourself a bunch of additional assets to make that move back.
Timeout. Arizona failing to move back from 3 would be a greater or worse failure than the Panthers in year 1 of the Matt Rule era failing to move out of 6. Or 8, or where 8. They drafted Derek Brown at 8, I believe.
Yeah, I'd say it'd be more because you're legitimately looking at this and there's going to be quarterbacks on the board. There's going to be a quarterback on the board at 3. Especially right in front of the Colts. We'll get to the other dynamics with the landscape of this draft, but that's a prime opportunity to go and get the third guy, right? And so if you're going to 3, you have to make sure that there's 3 quarterbacks that you like, right? That's a critical piece of it. But for Arizona, I think that they're in prime position to get themselves multiple first-round picks to set themselves up with the draft capital that we've already mentioned to really – get this thing turned around with a massive infusion of young talent.
All right, so I have a question for you pertaining to the Titans and their psyche of getting this deal done, but we'll save that until after we tell everybody about our friends over at Built.
Yeah, and listen, the Built March Madness bracket, it's still going on. So we all know that you have your favorite protein bar, your favorite puff. Head on over to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote. I'm going to be supporting the Brownie Batter Puffs, but if you got a favorite, head on over, make your vote count, and listen, there's going to be some people that are going to win some stuff. 50 people are going to get a free box of Built Bars, and someone's going to win a 12-month subscription to have the best Built Bars and Puffs delivered right to your door for 12 months. So head on over and check it out. And look, folks, if you haven't tried Built Bars, I don't know what to tell you. They're low calorie, they're low sugar, they're high protein, they're delicious. So many great flavors. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. They are awesome. So head on over to BuiltMarchMadness.com. Pick up a box while you're there. Send in your vote. Time's running out, so head on over and make your vote count today.
We're in the finals of the Built March Madness, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Brownie Batter's in there, right?
Brownie Batter Puffs versus Salted Caramel.
Yeah, this is a landslide. This is no chance for the
How did Salted Caramel... I get why they beat Coconut Puff in the Elite Eight. Them beating Churro Puff in the Sweet 16 was nonsense in the first place.
I would
agree. But then they beat Cookie Dough Chunk Puff in the Final Four. Who is voting for Salted Caramel?
Not me. I love Built Bars. That's not even one of my favorites.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Like Salted Caramel, it's a good bar, but like you could hold it up against two of the three that it's beaten, and it's not even close to the best bar.
Yeah.
So I just voted for Brownie Batter Puff just to try and get this thing done.
Yeah.
Lock it in. So my question for you, you're the Tennessee Titans. There's no way you do this trade before draft night, right?
Why wouldn't I? If I think there's three quarterbacks that I like and I feel like I need to go get a quarterback.
Are you going to like three quarterbacks with
how
different these quarterbacks are?
Correct. Like that's where this gets difficult for me. And yeah, obviously we're going to talk about the Tennessee Titans right now. But I think for Tennessee, if they do believe in three quarterbacks, which if they're going to make the trade, they would, I think there's no reason to wait. I would go ahead and do this right now. And here's what's interesting, Kyle. We mentioned with Arizona and their general manager being Monty Ford, who was the director of player personnel in Tennessee from 2020 through 2022. Well, the Titans GM is Ran Carthon, and he's been a part of two big trades up. You go back to his time with the Rams, 2012 through 2016. He was a director of player personnel there when they traded up for Goff. Oh, by the way, his most recent stop was with the San Francisco 49ers, 2017 through 2022, where they made the trade up the board for Trey Lance. So these trades are well within
it's in his DNA.
Oh man, he's been doing this. He's been part of two of the biggest trades up in the NFL draft over the last 10 years. And so this is absolutely something he's accustomed to.
Because Rams went from 16-1.
Yeah.
And 49ers went from 12-3.
And now here this Rand Carthon's with Tennessee, picking 11.
Back in the saddle, baby.
Moving to 3. He's ready to go, man.
Let's get Rand Carthon with a different team next year just so that it can happen every year.
Well, hopefully for Rand Carthon, he's got a little bit of time here with Tennessee to build this thing.
Let's make it count here. I guess I'm when you put it through that lens, it kind of takes away some of the surprise that I have that Tennessee would have the appetite to do this, because I think you look at the Titans roster and you recognize the attrition that's taken place on the roster over the last 3 seasons as that team has gotten older and not been able to bring back some players and made some transitions, and what the offensive line looks like now. They probably feel as though they've landed 2 starters on the offensive line between Dillard and Brunskill, so that alleviates the immediate concern in that capacity. You got young draft picks in Okwonkwo and Burks and Kyle Phillips, so you have some youth there. I guess I can see why this is the move, but I guess if I just looked at it on a surface level and it didn't have Rand Carthon's background, I would say that the Titans would probably be less likely to make this kind of move because of where the roster has trended over the last couple of years. But they've been very active in free agency. They got a bunch of players.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what's interesting about the Titans conversation is there's why are we having this conversation? Oh, well, Rand Carthon's been part of these trades, and we certainly recognize that they need a new direction at quarterback. They obviously have Ryan Tannehill. Malik Willis certainly struggled last year. I don't know that the book's written on Malik, but maybe they've seen enough to feel like they like the ideas of what they can get at number 3. But Kyle, I mean, I know that you identified some talent that Tennessee does have, but I don't really look at them as a team that should be thinking about this right now. Especially when you consider you're probably talking about moving up for Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. And both are exciting physical talents, but both are guys that need a lot of work to be the guy. And I would want to have a ton of confidence in that player if I was moving up to 3. And certainly if the Titans do this, they do, right? Mm-hmm. But we see how this goes. I mean, it's not tried and true. I like having convictions and going and get your guy. Like, I definitely believe in that. But I'm lukewarm on the options, and I'm lukewarm on this roster as a team that's ready to onboard a young franchise quarterback that comes in with the gravity of what it's going to take to move up to 3 to get him.
Well, I think that's part of the conversation too, because if is Tennessee operating in the assumption that we're not going to get close to this stratosphere to draft again?
Maybe.
What? I'm going to float around and produce this thing. Just give me a second, okay?
All right. Well, Kyle's floating around producing, and we're considering whether or not the Titans will be in striking distance to make a trade. And I think we'll get into the next segment, but maybe you look at some of the teams out there that need a quarterback but aren't in striking distance and foil that against Tennessee, who has a shot to get in range here.
What do you does Ryan Tannehill have any trade value in your mind?
Yeah, I think so. I think he does. Yes. Kyle, we're living in a world where last year, Jameis Winston was somebody's preferred week 1 starting quarterback. Marcus Mariota was somebody's week 1 preferred starting quarterback. That happens. So I don't dismiss that idea at all. I think that I saw the Bills get a 3rd-round pick for Tyrod Taylor. I mean, I'm not saying he has massive trade value, but there's somebody out there that whether their starter goes down or they need a bridge guy or whatever, that Ryan Tannehill should have some appeal for.
So I guess that's where this gets interesting is you look at the Titans have 4 players under contract with a salary cap hit in excess of $10.7 million, which is what Jeffrey Simmons is getting on the 5th-year option. You know the 4?
Simmons, Bayer, Tannehill, and Henry, I would guess.
Well, spot.
I guess Harold Landry, maybe.
That's cool. I guess I'm going to. Tannehill, Bayard, Landry, and Derrick Henry are all $16 million or more. If Tannehill has trade value and you trade up for a quarterback, that's one off the books. Derrick Henry, you're talking about trading. That draft capital can probably go a long way. It won't replace the ones. No. And I think there's probably a deep-rooted conversation in what the ones are going to, how many ones it's going to cost you to move up from 11 to 3 in the midst of Indianapolis at 4, probably trying to play defense.
Yeah.
The Raiders at 7. Like, you're going to have to dramatically outbid some teams here to get it done. Mm-hmm. But if Derrick Henry gets you 3, and what does Ryan Tannehill get you? 3?
Something
4?
middle round pick like that.
I know they traded a 4 for him and got Miami to eat half his dollars 4 years ago. But I think if the market gets scarce enough at quarterback, I think they could get a middle round pick. It's at least something as a part of the cap dump. So how much of this is posturing for the arms race that they're expecting in the South with the Texans loading up and getting a quarterback and the Jaguars having Trevor Lawrence and chasing him down at the end of the year last year and getting better? And how much of that is influenced here?
I think it's
huge. The Colts getting a quarterback.
You're going to sit there and watch Houston
and Indianapolis.
While Jacksonville already has Trevor Lawrence, and you're sitting there, well, damn, we got Ryan Tannehill. Maybe Malik Willis will be good. What's our path to be part of this conversation? And I absolutely think that's got to be part of what Tennessee's thinking about.
Is that worth the cost?
No.
To the rest of the
no,
so you don't think it's worth it to the rest of the roster?
No, and I think teams get themselves in trouble with that, brother. We were AFC East fans during the Tom Brady run. We saw what our teams did to constantly posture and try to close the gap on the Patriots, right? And you did irresponsible thing after irresponsible thing, and you never did it. Don't do this. And that's a huge comparison, right? But I hope you can understand philosophically, like, that whole concept of being so mindful of what everyone else in your division is doing that you're making irresponsible decisions to kind of stay the with them or close the gap while you're not being smart enough about your build and your vision and what you need to do. I think you need to take your resources to build the best possible team that you can, as opposed to, well, the Texans might get a good player at number 2 and Trevor Lawrence is good and let's see what Indy does. We might want to block them. I think you just got to make it work for yourself and try to build the best football team that you can with the resources that you have. Especially
early on, right?
Yeah, it's year
you
one.
Have time
dude.
you have time on your side right now. But Mike Vrabel probably doesn't. And he's got goodwill built up with how good that team's been for the last 6-7 years. But is he going to want to take 3 years and take 2 regression years before you're competing again? I don't know. There's a lot of unique variables with the shoes that Tennessee is in, and I think that's why the discussion is open to them making this kind of move.
We're going to talk about what the package could look like and some of the other dominoes throughout the draft, Kyle, but as we kind of wrap up this Titans-specific conversation, I think it's really smart of you to bring up what assets they currently have that can net them some draft capital, because one of the challenges that I have with Tennessee, outside of I don't know that they're ready to make this type of move, is that they're not like loaded with draft capital. They own picks 11, 41, 72. That's it for top 100 picks. 147 is their next pick, 186, 228. So you're really going to deplete yourself very quickly. And I get concerned about those two things being true. Hey, I don't think you're ready, but I also don't think you're necessarily loaded with assets. And that to me, that's a dangerous recipe for a really raw quarterback.
They have 1 through 4 in 2024 too. Their 5 belongs to Carolina in the Dennis Daly trade. Their 6 belongs to Philadelphia for the Ugo Amadi trade. They got a 7 back from Philadelphia as a part of the Ugo Amadi trade with a pick swap, and there's a conditional Tyree Gillespie that's floating around that may or may not be theirs or not. So
we're in on this from the Arizona perspective.
Yeah.
We're not quite seeing it from the Tennessee side of things.
I get it. I don't know that I love it. But if that's the DNA of who Ran Carthon is and how he's come up to expect to build a team, there's no right or wrong way to do it, right? I just think it narrows the path.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
For the rest of your decisions. You can't do the John Robinson thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to be the inverse of John Robinson if you're going to do this and have success.
All right, well, there's other implications with this potential trade. We're going to explore some of that here in just a moment and, of course, talk about what this trade package could look like.
So you mentioned the 2 Ran Carthon trade-ups in L.A. and San Francisco that he was a part of. Those are 2 of a very limited sample size of trades into the top 5 for quarterbacks. We did this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. When
discussing the number 1 overall pick, and then the Carolina Panthers and Chicago Bears added to that with that trade, which was 9, 60, a future 1, a future 2, and DJ Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the full boat?
Yeah.
And then obviously the San Francisco deal in 2021, which was 3 1s. And there was some change that was thrown in on top of that. But
3.
It
was the third round compensatory.
3 1s and a 3 for number 3 overall. That's the 2 most recent ones. So that's the big hits were Lance and Goff. Those were the big swings from outside the top 10. I know the Mark Sanchez trade back in 2009 or whatever it was an outside the top 10 jump up too, but that was exceptionally cheap. I don't think this one will be exceptionally cheap. It sounds like this one is trending more towards the competition of the QB class and the hurdles in front of Tennessee that they'd have to clear. This bidding probably starts with 3 1s.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's if I'm the Cardinals, I'm Monty Ossenfort. Okay. We want 11, your first round pick in 2024, 25, and a third round pick. We want the same package that you gave to the Miami Dolphins when you were with San Francisco. That's what we want.
That doesn't help the negotiations too much, does it?
No, dude. It's like you already did this
Ray,
deal.
You just did that. You were a part of just doing this deal.
Yeah.
Because he obviously wasn't calling the shots, but he was in the building. So he's like, look, y'all know what you paid in San Francisco. Why should it be any less? For one spot? One spot difference? When there were 2 quarterbacks that went 1 and 2 in 2021 as well?
Right.
I think that's where it gets the most scary for me. Like, you tell me the Titans trade up, okay, I can stomach it. But for 3 ones, if you're doing it blindly, I couldn't do it blindly. I'd have to know who's on the board. And I'd have to definitively know I love one of those players.
You have to have a list of 3, and you have to ask yourself.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's how you get there, and certainly you do your due diligence. But it's, to me, that's how that conversation should go. Take it or leave it. But if you're Arizona, this is the other side of this, right? Like, as much as it is about defense, but like, if you're Arizona, maybe you're willing to move back to 4 with the Colts. Obviously, you probably would be. Maybe you can entice the Raiders at 7. Seattle at 5, Lions at 6. I don't know, maybe. I don't think so there, but possibly. But I think you're really, what you're really doing here is you're pinning the Colts against the Titans.
Right. You're feeding off of that divisional competition. Let me ask you this. Does going from 9 to 1 and not giving up 3 ones, is that the reverse Uno card for Tennessee?
I think DJ Moore counts as a 1. If DJ Moore was traded independently, a first-round pick goes to Carolina.
Probably.
So to me, I do think that they got 3 ones.
So is there an asset that can go to Arizona instead of another one? Would you rather give a different asset instead of a third one?
What does Tennessee have that they would trade that nets you a 1? Harold Landry, Kevin Byard? I don't know, man.
Yeah, so Byard was the guy who was rumored to be on the – they asked him to take a pay cut, I believe, and he scoffed at it.
Tennessee do some weird stuff, man, with their players.
Right.
Stuff you've never seen before.
So Landry's probably got too much dead cap to move. Byard's got –
he's coming off an injury, right?
13-6. But that's the one thing that Arizona does have is safeties.
Right.
I mean, they're paying Jalen Thompson like a top 12 annual average salary contract at safety, and they have Budda Baker. Yeah. And then Isaiah Simmons is your nickel.
Yeah, I mean, can you get – I don't know, dude. I don't know what Tennessee has. Jeffrey Simmons?
That I was just going to call a timeout and ask about Jeffrey Simmons.
That's what it is. It's Jeffrey Simmons.
What's Jeffrey Simmons worth in a vacuum?
Man, brother, a lot. Well, no, DeForest. It's the DeForest Buckner trade, is what that is.
He's better than DeForest Buckner was.
So, okay, a 1 and some change, a 4, something like that.
Right.
But he counts as a 1.
Because if Tennessee's looking at this and they're saying, well, we're going to get rid of Tannehill, we're going to move on from Henry, they're receptive to doing these things. It's not saying they're going to do that. There's obviously a savings, a cap savings approach here. Now, Simmons is going to require 20-something per, probably. I'd guess he would get the number 1 value on the market when he signs this deal. 22? Is Tennessee, is the extra 1 in a rookie contract more valuable to Tennessee than Jeffrey Simmons with a $22 million per year contract? I'm not saying definitively one way or the other. I'm saying that's the question that they'd have to ask themselves if Arizona's like, okay, yeah, we don't need 3 ones, but we're going to need Jeffrey Simmons then.
And if you're Jonathan Gannon as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, you got to be licking your chops to get Jeffrey Simmons to jumpstart your defense.
Right.
You feel like you got something, you know?
Right.
If I'm Arizona, I'd want 11 Jeffrey Simmons in your first-round pick next year. That gets it done for me.
I would probably take that deal as well because I think Jeffrey Simmons in a vacuum gets more than just a 1.
You move back to 11, you get, I don't know, Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon at corner.
Yeah, how different's your defense going to look with Jeffrey Simmons?
Real quick. With Jonathan Gannon, hopefully they can get a little bit more out of Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins as well. right? Like you hope that happens.
Now, we're just kind of galaxy braining this. I don't think we've seen anywhere that Jeffrey Simmons is in discussion. Like, Tennessee should want to keep him. But it's just that question of, is a rookie contract in 2025 more valuable to us in the build of the team than Jeffrey Simmons 2 years from now and paying him probably $60 million between now and then? What is the win? It's the Laramie Tunsil thing with the Dolphins. Right? And the Dolphins decided, hey, the price is too good in return for Laramie Tunsil for us to justify paying Laramie Tunsil a market reset contract when we are not going to be largely competitive for the next year to 2 years.
For Tennessee, the answer to that question lies in, did it get you your quarterback? Do you have your no-doubt quarterback?
That's why you can't do it before you know who's on the board. I'm sorry. I could not do it.
It's all you have to do is stack 3 quarterbacks.
I understand that.
And if you believe in that third one, if you believe in all 3 of them.
Couldn't do it.
No, you can do it, Kyle. I'm telling you that you can.
You can. I think it's insane.
No, maybe it's insane. You have to find, if there are 3 quarterbacks that you believe in wholeheartedly, they're going to be franchise legit quarterbacks in the NFL, you can do the trade right now. If you can honestly say that.
The cost will be cheaper to do it right now, so I get it. It'd be cheaper to do it now than on draft night.
I mean, I think we're looking at this a little bit too much from Tennessee side of things. Arizona also wants to maximize their opportunity to get a bunch of assets to fix their football team.
Right, so I'd wait until
they can't sit there
on the clock and be like, okay, guys, here's who's actually on. Who fell in love with one of these guys? Who fell in love with Will Levis?
You have that. Those terms are all figured out already beforehand. And then you call them up and say, you want it?
Could not be me. Anything else here?
It's fun, man. It's fun conversation.
Galaxy brain stuff, huh? Didn't think we were going to talk about the possibility of trading Jeffrey Simmons as we started the show either. And
hey,
off we went. Now, Titans fans will probably be offended that we even asserted it. And I get it. Because Jeffrey Simmons is a top 3 interior defensive lineman.
He's up there, yeah. He's up there.
In the NFL.
He's high.
Everybody's got a price, though, right? Everybody's got a price. And we'll see if the Cardinals and Titans can agree on a price. Appreciate you guys checking out Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We appreciate you guys making us a part of your day. Check out all of the shows on the Locked On NFL Network and the Locked On Network in its totality. All of your teams every day here on the network. Love chatting ball with you guys. Hope you'll come back and see us again tomorrow. Make it a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Peace.